Okay, picture this. A new piece of tech comes along that promises to literally revolutionize global finance. It soars to these unimaginable heights, crashes so incredibly hard that basically everyone writes its obituary, and then somehow claws its way back from the brink to break all-time global records. That, in a nutshell, is the absolutely wild story of Solana. And honestly, it really begs the question, right? How exactly does a network lose 97% of its value in just a matter of weeks, suffer these highly publicized massive network blackouts, and still manage to become one of the most adopted blockchains in the world by the time 2025 rolls around? Well, today, we are mapping out the high stakes of this entire technological roller coaster ride. Let's dive right into Act 1, the Maverick blockchain. When Solana first hit the crypto scene back in 2020, it wasn't just, another competitor. It was this lightning-fast, ultra-cheap disruptor aiming straight for the bottlenecks of all the older networks. And it captured everybody's attention with this exact crazy number, 0.000005 SOL. That is the base transaction fee on the network. Literally, even at peak market prices, we are talking about a fraction of a single penny. It basically meant you could execute thousands of transactions for the cost of a single piece of gum. This immediately undercut traditional financial systems, making microtransactions and high-frequency trading finally viable for everyday users. But you've got to wonder, how did they actually achieve that kind of speed and cost? Well, the superpower under the hood here is proof of history. Look at it this way. Instead of forcing every single node to constantly pause and agree on what time it is, which is kind of like a huge group of people constantly stopping to check their watches against each other, proof of history acts as this synchronized cryptographic metronome. It uses what's called a verifiable delay function to timestamp transactions before they're even grouped into blocks. So this allows thousands of global validators to process data entirely independently without waiting around to synchronize. To put that in perspective, traditional blockchains are synchronous. They are bottlenecked, much like a single-lane highway. They process one single thing at a time. Solana, however, is asynchronous. Using its totally unique sea-level protocol, it acts way more like a massive multi-lane superhighway, executing smart contracts in parallel. This huge architectural leap is exactly what enables its blistering block times of just 400 milliseconds. Now, as you can imagine, this unprecedented speed ignited an absolute frenzy. Solana launched via public sale in March 2020 at just 22 cents. By August 2021, the NFT craze hit hard. Collections like the Degenerate Ape Academy were selling out in literal minutes, which pushed the network's capabilities right into the mainstream spotlight. And by November 2021, fueled by this massive wave of DeFi adoption, the price just skyrocketed to an all-time high of roughly $260. Guys, that is a gain of over 11,000% in a single year. But of course, what goes up? Well, let's move to Act 2, the crash and the choke. Explosive growth almost always uncovers hidden fractures, right? We're cutting to the incredibly dark days of late 2021 and 2022, introducing the villainous forces that honestly almost killed the network, crippling congestion and a total market collapse. Between its launch and early 2024, the blockchain suffered 7 major outages where it completely, 100%, halted block production. 5 of these were caused by nasty software bugs in the validator code, and 2 were triggered by massive floods of spam transactions that simply choked the entire system. Now, you may be wondering, why shut down completely instead of just slowing down? It all comes down to a very strict architectural trade-off. See, Solana prioritizes data consistency over staying online. If validators can't agree on the exact correct state of the blockchain, the network intentionally halts to protect user funds from bad transactions. And because the network ran entirely on a single validator client called Agave, a bug in that code meant every single node was hit simultaneously. Boom, lights out. And then came November 2022, the catastrophic collapse of the FTX exchange. Their entities held over $1 billion worth of SOL. The resulting mass liquidations and sheer market panic triggered a devastating value wipeout. Solana lost nearly 97% of its value from its peak, plummeting to a brutal floor of just $8.13 by December. Which brings us to Act 3, the blockbuster comeback. Because while the market panicked, the core engineers quietly put their heads down and went to work. During the absolute depths of that bear market, they performed some highly technical triage, rolling out critical stabilization upgrades. They implemented Quick, which is essentially a much smarter internet protocol to better manage heavy traffic. They introduced local fee markets so users could pay slightly more to jump the queue without clogging the whole system for everyone else. And they added stake-weighted quality of service, which is an upgrade that prioritizes traffic based on how heavily invested a validator actually is. Finally, they had the robust tools they needed to separate genuine transactions from automated spam. And the results of that engineering triage? Absolutely undeniable. 16 consecutive months. By mid-2025, Solana had achieved its longest ever stability streak, over 16 consecutive months without a single major officially confirmed outage. The network was finally truly stable under intense real-world pressure. And you know what? This technical stability translated directly into a triumphant market recovery. From that agonizing $8 bottom in December 2022, real, heavy-hitting institutional credibility began to build. Fast forward to September 2023, Visa announces live USDC settlement directly on the Solana blockchain. Huge. By January 2025, spot Solana ETFs launch with massive inflows from major financial institutions. And on January 19, 2025, the whole thing culminated in a historic new all-time high of approximately $295. Just an incredible turnaround. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Section 4, tokenomics under the hood. To really understand how this massive global infrastructure secures itself, we have to look at the financial engine driving the whole thing, the supply breakdown. So out of 625.5 million total SOL, about 92.1% is actively circulating. But the absolute most vital number here is that a massive 68.1% of the entire supply is actively staked. This means everyday holders are locking up their tokens with validators to ensure the network security and keep it decentralized. That is a whole lot of skin in the game. To incentivize all that staking, Solana uses a highly predictable inflation schedule. It started at an initial rate of 8%, but it tapers off, meaning it drops by 15% every single year. Right now, it sits at 3.87%, and it's on a steady glide path down to a final long-term target of 1.5%. And to offset this inflation, the network actively burns 50% of every single transaction fee. So it's this carefully designed balancing act to keep the economics healthy and in check. Moving on to Section 5, building the next generation. Look, they stabilized the network and they definitely recovered the price, but as global demand continues to skyrocket, they are rolling out some seriously heavy-hitting technical upgrades to scale even further. First up is Firedancer. This is a brand new, independent validator client built by Jump Crypto. And get this, it has demonstrated over 1 million transactions per second in testing. Insane. Then there's the 100 million compute units upgrade, which essentially increases the block capacity limit by a whopping 66%. And don't forget the XDP networking upgrade, which is already available. It allows data to flow much more directly, lowering network latency by up to 200 times. But honestly, here is the ultimate plot twist. Remember proof of history? That foundational cryptographic clock we spent so much time talking about at the very beginning? Well, the upcoming Alpenglow upgrade will actually remove proof of history entirely. Yeah, you heard that right. By introducing validator admission tickets, or VAT fees, Alpenglow radically simplifies the consensus protocol to achieve mind-bending 150 millisecond confirmation times. It's a total game changer. And it doesn't stop there either. These additional ecosystem upgrades are going to fundamentally improve the daily user experience. Account rent, which is basically the fee developers pay to store their data on the blockchain, is being reduced to make it up to 90% cheaper to build. And then there's SIM D123. This is a massive shift. It allows everyday users who stake their tokens to actually get a direct cut of the block revenue. Combine all of this with larger transaction sizes, and developers can execute far more complex smart contract operations in a single click. Which brings us to our final thought today. From an experimental maverick to a crashing network completely written off by the masses, to an institutionally backed powerhouse rolling out million TPS upgrades, can this new foundation truly sustain the network for decades to come? It's literally a Hollywood-style rebirth, but obviously only time will tell if Solana has cemented itself as the ultimate Layer 1 blockchain. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope it gave you a crystal clear picture of the network's absolutely incredible journey.